Hi, I'm Wendy from Shiny Happy World, and today I'm going to show you how I cut small squares out of scraps to make a scrap quilt. So for the first example, I'm going to show you using a long, just normal ruler. This is a 6-inch wide ruler. How to cut pieces out of a larger chunk of fabric. So this is really just basic rotary cutting, and I do have a video that has all the details about rotary cutting. The first thing I'm going to do is just trim off the bottom. I've got that little fringy edge and I don't want that there. So I'm going to trim that off, get rid of it. And now I'm going to measure up 2 inches from the bottom because I want 2-inch squares. And I'm going to very carefully line up the edge of the fabric with the 2-inch marking on my ruler. Then I'm going to press down, so I'm holding the ruler, I'm pressing it down over the fabric. That helps stabilize it and also gives me a really accurate cut. And I'm going to cut a strip. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to cut another strip. And I'm going to get as many strips as I can get out of a piece of fabric. In this case, I'm just going to get 2 strips out of it. Now, to make things just a little bit faster, I'm going to stack these on top of each other, and I'm just going to very carefully line up the pieces so that the edges are perfectly stacked up. Now I can tell by looking at it that this is not a right angle to my cut edges. It's not off by much, but I can see that it's off by a little bit. So I'm going to lay my ruler down so that any of my cross stripes, it doesn't really matter which one, are lined up with the cut edge of the fabric that I can see through the ruler. And I've got just a little bit of fabric hanging off the edge here. That's what I'm going to cut off. And now I know a perfect right angle there, or as perfect as I can get it measuring things by eye, which is pretty close. Now I'm going to just turn it the other way so that I can make the last cuts. And what I do for these, again, this isn't rocket science, so super precision isn't necessary. Nobody's going to die if this is wrong, but you do want to get it as accurate as possible. So when I'm cutting my second squares, I'm making sure that this cut edge is lined up with a straight edge on my ruler, and also this cut edge. That way I know when I make the cut here, I'm going to have a perfect square. And I make that cut. And now I just cut 2 squares. And I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to take just a minute and make sure that both of those edges are lined up with the machine edges on the ruler, and cut. And I'm not sure if I can get one more out of here. We'll see. Yep, I'll be able to get just one more square. So I got 6 squares out of that little piece of fabric, and that was pretty simple to do because it was already kind of rectangular shaped. But what do you do when you have these kinds of random pieces, the odds and ends that are left over from a lot of projects, especially if you sew stuffed animals or clothing that have a lot of curved seams in them? That's when I use this ruler. It's a ruler that's really especially designed to cut squares, and I also use it for half square triangles because it has the 45-degree line marked in it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I don't think I can get a 2-inch square out of this. And that's what I'm cutting for my quilt. So I lay it down, and you can see that there's a 2-inch line here. That's what I'm looking at. I'm getting that as close to the edges as I can. And you can see that my fabric is not going all the way to the edge of the ruler. So I'm going to throw this piece of fabric away. If I can't get a 2-inch square out of it, I'm going to let it go. But this one, I can get a 2-inch square out of. I'm looking at that. And I set my ruler down, and yep, I can. So the nice thing about this ruler is that you can cut 2 cuts with 1 ruler placement. So I'm making sure that I've got the ruler so that the 2-inch markings on both sides are within the fabric, and also that I have fabric on both sides there. And I'm going to hold my ruler down, then I'm going to cut once on this side and once on this side. And now I've cut a good right angle there. And I'm just going to flip it around, and I'm going to line up that 2-inch mark right on those cut edges, just like when I was cutting the 2-inch squares with the rectangular ruler. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push this down and I'm going to cut these last two bits. And now I have a perfect 2-inch square. And just like with the other rectangle, the longer rectangular ruler, you can take several odd-shaped scraps and stack them up and cut them all at once. So that's it. I use 2 different rulers when I'm cutting small squares for a scrap quilt, and it really the one I choose depends on the kind of the size and shape of the scrap that I'm working with. If it's a long strip or if it's already sort of rectangular shaped, I will use my rectangular ruler and I'll cut 2-inch strips and then cut 2-inch squares out of those strips, just regular rotary cutting. If I have irregularly shaped pieces or especially small pieces, that's when I'm going to grab that square ruler that has the square lines on it that are showing 2 sides of the square. And I'll use those to cut perfect square pieces out of all those weird odd shapes that you end up left over. I'm Wendy from Shiny Happy World. I'll see you next time.